So I'm going to call the public meeting of Toronto Community Housing to order. I'd like to say good morning. My name is Adele Imrie, and I'm the chair of the Toronto Community Housing Board of Directors. Today's meeting is a hybrid meeting, which is taking place in Committee Room 1 of City Hall and virtually using our WebEx platform. And we are also live streaming today's meeting on YouTube. I would like to begin with an acknowledgement that the land we are all on is the traditional territory of many nations, including the Mississaugas of the Credit, the Anishinaabe, the Chippewa, the Haudenosaunee, and the Wendat people, and is now home to many diverse First Nations, Inuit, and Métis peoples. We also acknowledge that Toronto is covered by Treaty 13 with the Mississaugas of the Credit. We also acknowledge all treaty people, including those who came here as settlers, as migrants, either in this generation or in generations past, and those of us who came here involuntarily, particularly those brought to these lands as a result of the transatlantic slave trade and slavery. We pay tribute to these ancestors of African origin and descent. I would like to welcome back John Campbell to our board. He was on a leave of absence, and he has returned to board duties last month, and so I welcome him back to the board. We would like to speak today to the National Day of Mourning. This is a time to honor those who have been killed, injured, or suffered illnesses due to a workplace incident or hazard. It is also an opportunity for all of us to recommit to a culture of workplace safety, strengthening our health and safety policies, procedures, and training. A safe workplace is critical to TCHC's long-term success, and the board is deeply committed to supporting management in taking steps to maintain the health and safety of all TCHC employees. That work is supported by TCHC's labor partners at QP Local 416, QP Local 79, and OPSEU Local 529, Carpenters Local 27, International Trades, as well as the staff volunteers on TCHC's Joint Health and Safety Committees. We cannot do this alone, and the board is grateful for the help of so many partners. I will now ask that you join me in a moment of silence to honor those who have been harmed due to a workplace incident and to reflect on how we recommit ourselves to advancing the cause of safety in the workplace. Thank you. I would also like to offer our condolences to the friends and family of those who lost their lives or were injured at the Lupa Lupa Festival in Vancouver recently. This is certainly a Canadian tragedy and should be acknowledged by all Canadians. And I'm going to take a moment on a lighter note. I want to highlight one of the one of the great perks of this job. So last week, I participated in 2 celebrations of TCHC's The Next Surgeon program. And I hope you remember, we celebrated the program in December. We saw a video. It was an award-winning program at OMFA. It won the Innovation Award. And I just want to remind you that it's a program that offers high school students mentorship. It allows our student tenants who are interested in health sciences to participate in simulations and panels at St. Mike's Hospital. And it runs over several weeks in areas like orthopedic surgery, cardiac surgery, emergency room medicine, as well as other medical professional procedures. TCHC has partnered with Unity Health, Toronto U of T's Temerty Faculty of Medicine, and Upsurge for the past 3 years to provide this program. The students are instructed by doctors, nurses, and other healthcare professionals, and are mentored by previous grads of the program and med school students to help them understand and fulfill the requirements for the chosen area of study, and to help them navigate that process and encourage them. It's a lengthy process. In addition to the ONFA award, the program has been featured in various media stories. A few weeks ago, there was a star story in the Sunday Star, and I did want to thank Daniel Kim, TCHC communications consultant, who pitched the story to the Toronto Star. And I really appreciate Daniel's efforts, as it's great to have a positive story out there about TCHC. And certainly this is a positive story, so I do thank Daniel. The story caught the attention of Paula Fletcher at the city, who took it to the mayor's office. And last Thursday, the current students and mentors and the managers of this program from TCHC were celebrated at City Council. And they were provided with certificates of recognition from the city. There were many pictures taken with the mayor, and a scroll was provided to managers of TCHC who run this program. And I was honored to be invited and to join the celebration at City Hall and have the opportunity to meet the students and their mentors. It was an amazing event, and these are brilliant young people. And they are very committed, very hardworking, and I know that we're going to hear wonderful things in the future about their future accomplishments. And I was honored to have the opportunity to meet them. It was a distinct pleasure. I also had the honor to meet Stacy Golding, who is the Community Service Coordinator who developed the program, and Raquel Nelson, who is the Manager of Community Economic Development. These women certainly deserve all the accolades that they've been given in the past few days, and certainly in the future. They have developed a wonderful program and continue to ensure that the program develops and grows. They have an incredible commitment to these students and to TCHC's tenants, and it's inspiring. It truly is inspiring. They certainly go above and beyond to support all involved in the program, and their passion for their work and the tenants is it's obvious, and it's invaluable to TCHC. Stacy and Raquel were kind enough to invite me to the graduation ceremony held at Regent Park on Saturday, and again, it was a joy to behold. The students were recognized for their significant accomplishments. Everyone in attendance was certainly very proud of these brilliant kids and all that they had achieved. They had the opportunity also to thank Stacy and Raquel and the doctors and other medical professionals who have given generously of their time and have been instrumental in the success of this program and the success of the students who participate in the program. And I was really impressed with all the young people involved, and grateful to have the opportunity to witness something that's really a life-changing opportunity for these students and our tenants. So I just wanted to highlight that for everyone, because to me, this is what makes TCHC great. And this is why we're doing what we're doing. And I wanted to take the opportunity to acknowledge it publicly and to thank everyone who's involved. So on that note, we will move to, I think it does deserve a round of applause, Debbie. Absolutely. These people have worked really hard, and they are what makes TCHC great. So I will move on to the agenda and ask if there are any additions or deletions to today's agenda as it's presented. Okay, hearing none, I will ask if there are any conflicts of interest as it relates to today's agenda. Okay, hearing none, I'm going to ask if there are any items that the board of directors would like to hold for discussion. We are holding items 13 as it is a presentation, and there is a deputation as well as a deputation on item 18. And somehow in this, I've lost my agenda. Here it is. So are there any items that board members would like to hold? Benita? 5 and 6, please. 5 and 6. Are there any other items?
Which item the
sorry,
crisis
Uba.
transfer comes under? I'm looking at the,
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear you, Uba.
Do you hear me now?
Yep.
Okay. Which item the crisis transfer comes under? I was looking at it, but I can't see it.
It's item number 13, and Uba, it's already been held because we have a deputation and there is a presentation on that item.
Thanks.
Okay?
Thank you.
Sorry, are there any other? Items? Okay, I had 17 and 18 circled. Oh, 18's got the, so 17. 18's got the deputation. Oh, and I had a quick question on number 12 on the process, but it's just a quick question. So can I have a motion to approve the agenda, excluding items number 5, 6, 12, 13, 17, and 18? John, Vanita seconder, all in favor? Okay, the motion has been approved. So Kevin, we have guests here from KPMG. So Kevin Travers, who's our partner, and Jafir Zishan, who is our senior manager. And it appears that the item hasn't been approved, so our financial statements, or hasn't been held. So it has been approved as part of our consent agenda. So certainly always appreciate seeing you, Kevin, but there's no need for you to stay. So thank you very much for your patience, and I appreciate
That's
you.
A win for them.
Okay, so we will move on to item number 5. Vanita, it's the business arising minutes.
Thank you, through the chair. My question's just related to the creditworthiness supplemental report. Very well written, by the way, and exciting to see that we are adopting good risk management strategies as a corporation. In some of the detail that's described, though, this question may go to Dara or it may go to Daisy. I'm just curious to understand what our PII handling process is, because there is a lot of personal information and data that we are transacting during this engagement. So how are we protecting that from a cyber risk perspective? Meaning, like, do we go straight into Equifax once you get the clearance, it's logged and that's it, that's managed through third-party services? But my concern there is, you know, on one hand, we're improving our financial risk management, but on the other, are we cognizant of where this goes from a cyber and privacy standpoint?
Through the chair, this is a question that I do not have a lot of detailed information about because it's not my forte. But the director, Fernando, is doing a very good job and is doing a lot of close relations, coordinating work with our IT folks. And as we speak, they were still having meetings last week. So we have confidence that we will overcome that, but there's challenges that we identified. I'm not at liberty to give them the details, but I'm happy to follow up. Perhaps IT can also, Lily, maybe you can chime in with the latest discussions they had last week. But it's going good because we actually have identified some security risks, and we come up with some kind of a solution that is fairly efficient and fairly economical. That's all I can say.
In terms of, through the chair, to add to Daisy's comment, in terms of boosting the cyber posture of the organization, we have a whole list of projects already started. For example, last week, we actually released a security threshold checklist across the organization, really to A, generate the awareness, and B, to really educate the team. In terms of be aware of the potential cybersecurity loopholes in our daily work, and why not. In terms of the privacy, I do have our acting VP information security, Linda Barrett. She can provide a little bit more details to the board.
Through the chair, when we look at information security and we're looking at PII, we look at quite a few controls. We evaluate the confidentiality, and then we're looking at a risk assessment of the cyber posture. So we're looking to see whether they have good governance, looking through what we previously articulated as the NISC framework. Do they have protection mechanisms? Do they have control mechanisms? We're evaluating not just the platform, the technology that they're using, but the actual organization and whether they have intent to govern and risk manage their security posture.
Anything to add before I return comments?
I mean, I believe that our own internal staff are also sensitive to issues around treating confidential information in a confidential manner. We have and are acting further to reinforce our records management framework and our retention policies to ensure that we're not keeping records of the corporation any longer than we should be keeping those records for a legitimate business purpose, that we're and that once our retention periods have expired, that we're taking appropriate action in order to dispose of those records in a responsible manner.
Thank you, everyone, for your response, but Dara, especially that just summed it up from a ERM sort of lens here, that it's one thing if we have a building cyber posture and we're working towards these activities, but when we start to implement something that might be newer and go full force, that there's alignment also with legal and risk, and there's an understanding that we're following appropriate protocols, because in the event of a cyber breach for our organization, this specific report is pointing to driver's licenses, addresses, social insurance numbers, and full credit bureau, which would be ripe for identity theft. So thank you all for your response. I feel satisfied with what I've received.
Perfect. Are there any other questions as it relates to item number 5? Okay, so can I have a motion to receive the business arising? Benita, Brian, thank you. All in favor? Motion passed. So we will move on to item number 6. Benita, I'll just ask you to ask your questions as it relates to that item.
Perfect. Another really well done report, Daisy. Thank you. Some of my questions on the budget reallocation is just, I know this report's meant to not be in detail, but if you could maybe speak to some of the activities, like you make reference to trying to achieve our green energy target per CMHC. So we're doing LED upgrades, how many buildings that might correspond to, some of the other envelope shuffles, you know, on the elevator side, on the electrical side, is that corresponding to what percentage of our portfolio, or just something a little bit more meaningful would be on the portfolio side versus the dollar amounts are helpful. Thank you.
Okay, so from the elevator side, we're looking at some of the additional money we needed due to some new TSSA requirements. So it's fairly minor, like on $558,000, and anything over $500,000 we reported. to the board that we're looking into needing that additional money. From the in-suite LED lighting side, it's really something that we deferred from 2024 to, so that we can do the work in 2025, because 2024, we did a very rigorous, a very aggressive attempt to bring the budget back in line to our capital, approve a capital budget funding. So this is, I don't have the detailed information instead of whether it's 1 or 2 buildings, but can definitely give it back to you, okay?
Brian?
Does any of this move any of our buildings from one category to another, the result of this work?
I don't quite understand moving from one category.
As buildings are classified in terms of their needs, in terms of their physical needs, we're trying to move buildings that are in better shape than their current. So, some buildings have been classified as needing deep. So does this help any of the buildings move categories to have these repairs?
You're talking about the FCI categories,
Pardon?
you're talking about the FCI categories, the ones that are in crisis and, yeah.
First of all the jobs that are listed in the capital budget is always the jobs that are identified on these jobs. So any improvements to the structure, to the site, and to the underground parking garages, like FCI is calculated in 3 different areas. It will always be an improvement to an FCI index.
The chair, yeah, certainly yes. The answer is yes, it will move some buildings into a better condition. We deal with nearly 1,000 projects a year, right? So which one of those actually cause a building to move from one threshold to another is going to be a smaller number than that, obviously, because you have to hit sort of those key thresholds, whether they be, I think it's 15 and 10, right, are where we cross over from critical to poor to fair. So a number of these projects will result in that. But of course, what's not shown in the reallocation is that every building we're not doing a project in continues to degrade year over year, right? So there will be, these projects will cause a number of buildings to move out of critical condition or out of poor condition, but there will be some others that, hopefully less, that move into that condition if we're not actively working on them. So, the goal as we manage the entire portfolio is we're moving, since the overall portfolio FCI is coming down, we are moving more buildings out of those conditions than are moving in, but it's a very slow process, right, over the hundreds of buildings that we're working with.
On an annual basis, I guess, as a board, we'd like, I know not obviously here, but a report to look at where we are across the portfolio and how our investments are going to help move those buildings that are in poor shape up to a better shape, so that we have some idea that the resources being spent are actually moving us to a better state for tenants.
Yeah, so through the chair, certainly heard, and I've heard those exact concerns and questions in past board meetings as well. So I've met with the team recently to look at different ways that we can stratify the portfolio and look at how many buildings are in what condition and how many have moved. So we are, I think, just on the cusp of being able to bring back much more detailed reports on exactly what you're asking.
And my understanding is that it's regular reporting to BIFAC on this matter, as opposed to just average FCI. Is that?
The reporting to, through the chair, the reporting to BIFAC still looks at portfolio level FCI and then looks at a number of very distressed projects that we've identified. I don't believe we have reported back on stratified levels of the various projects at this point, or the various buildings.
Okay.
We're still working on that.
Okay. So is there
Sean, you're
intent
correct.
to do that?
Absolutely.
Oh, okay. Because I thought even if the board receives it annually, that BIFAC was getting more regular updates. Yeah, you're working on it. That's the intent. That was my question. Are there any other questions on item number 6?
What's an example of an urgent structural repair?
Usually it means like for that amount, we're looking at change orders. Structural repairs usually, when we do work, when we started uncovering the concrete slab, we're showing the reinforcing bars that were deteriorated beyond repairs. And we cannot tell that until it's opened up. I mean, any tender, we can only put in an estimated quantities on how much repairs it needs to be done. Sometimes we open it up, the repairs are not as bad. You know, that the condition that we can salvage a lot, but in some conditions we can't. So that's really like the urgent repairs is you have to get it done while you're in the middle of a structural repair work. Okay.
Are there any other questions? Daisy, I had one as it relates to the schedule that's attached to this report. The chart at the end, I don't know if somebody wants to put it up. I wasn't clear on the headings. It's total budget, budget allocated to jobs, and then budget allocated job cost only. I'm not, if somebody wants to put up the chart. It's a schedule at the end of the report. And I'm presuming that this schedule doesn't, you're not reflecting that the reallocation has been approved?
It's not allocated yet until we get approval from the board.
Okay, so you
And
haven't.
it will be updated.
Okay. So I didn't, it's a chart at the end?
Yeah, page
No,
page 35?
this, where it says, you've got your original budget, then you've got your total budget, and then you've got, this is just plan that we're looking at, but then it's got total budgets, budget allocated to jobs is only $6 million, and then budget allocated job costs only is 173 million, and I wasn't sure what that meant, because when you go to the demand, you've got, anyway.
Okay, so when there's mentioning about job costs only, it usually means capital jobs, which is like the CA01 all the way down to SOGI. So when there's, like, because we have 340 plus the 40 million that we get from the city is 380 million. But the capital side that so far that we have allocated is about 180 or 180 million. So that's what it meant. The other category, when it says budget, okay, so it's kind of hard to read. Okay, sorry, my eyes are going. Okay, so the other category was the budget allocated to jobs. That usually means the year-end forecast that the staff was doing at that time to forecast this particular job. We were approved at $4 million for a multi-year, starting maybe 2024. That certain portion was done in 2024. Budget allocated to jobs in 2025, this is the amount that we're looking in. And then 2026 is a certain dollar amount. So it's really showing the year-end forecast at the time when the staff was doing the update.
Okay, maybe we can talk about this offline, because I
Yeah,
think what
that
you're trying to reflect is not
Yeah.
reflected
Absolutely.
here. And if you go down further, and looking at some of the planned and the other items, and anyway, it's not clear. So maybe we can talk about it offline, and.
Absolutely.
Because I understand what you're trying to reflect, but I don't think we're doing it clearly for the board. Sorry, John, did you have a question?
Well, I don't know if you need to talk about it online, because I found it confusing as well. So maybe I could just ask a specific question. So if I look at,
Put the chart back up, because it's easier. Not all of us have hard copies.
no, I think I'm the only one.
And I know you have one, John, that's great,
Yeah, I
but
think
the
I'm the
rest of
only
us
one.
don't, so just so we can read what you're reading. And if you can make it as big as,
So Daisy, if we look at, for example, I'll just pick an example, the fourth line down, holistic building retrofit program, original budget is 40 million.
can you, just get somebody,
Fourth from the top, and it says,
planned? Yep,
PRP, correct.
total budget, budgets allocated to jobs, negative 5.9 million. And then it says, budget allocated job cost only 45.9 million. So can you explain the differences between the two numbers?
Okay, so this is the reason why we prepared this report. It's, for 2025 capital budget, we were approved 40 millions to do HBRP means holistic deep retrofit projects, okay? And by about end of February, my staff is already realizing that the year end for this particular category, which consists of, 8, 9, 10 jobs, a bunch of jobs, and the year-end forecast will be 46 million, like 45.9. So it's about 46 million. So we're now coming to the board and ask that we will get approval from the board to take $6 million that we expected that the work to get done, more than we thought originally, from the contingency column down below at 20,225,000. So this said, we forecasted at 46 million. So the budget, the total budget allocated to jobs is really a long term, like a complicated term to say, means year-end forecast. So we're forecasting at end of February, we will be delivering $46 million worth of work.
Okay, all right, so that's the plan for the year, and then the reallocation amount is the 5.9 million into those projects?
Correct, currently.
So if that is true, then let's look at the top one, the common area accessibility. So you've budgeted, we approved 12 million, but it's coming in at 10 million, so we're saving 1 million from your explanation, is how I'm reading this.
Currently.
Okay, so the total budget allocated to jobs, the 1.9, is a saving?
No, the budget allocated to jobs is 10 million, because, so how do I say that? I wish my capital
The
plan.
common area accessibility, 12.2 million.
So the forecast for total, the accessibility on the first line is forecasted at 1.9 million, currently at end of February. That we will be out of 12 million, we're forecasting to complete the work at 1.9 million.
so you've only allocated 1.9, you only have jobs for the 1.9, and the 10.2, what's?
To be allocated, because there are jobs on the radar, and then they're ready to go out for tender.
Oh, I see, so the 10.2 is for additional,
Only
yeah.
allocated job costs.
There has to be another way to present this. Yeah.
And that's why I was thinking we would take this offline, because I don't think we're going to change the
Yeah.
schedule here. And clearly, it's confusing to everybody, because if you go down, you'll see that there's zeros.
That's
Like,
right.
It really,
Okay.
I think I understand what you're trying to project, Daisy, but it's clear to the board that what you're trying to project is not being projected in this schedule.
If I may, just through the chair. So the report is really just on the approval of the reallocations from contingency into where we know we have forecasted a need,
Yes.
right? Specifically the
This is separate from the
holistic one.
report,
The summary, I understand that that's causing confusion, so we can work on a better presentation of that to show what is already spent, what are we forecasting to spend, and where are we forecasting to be above or below what our original budget is? Because I think that's what board members would like to know.
Yes, and I think if you go back to the way it used to be presented, you'll pick up some things that will be helpful, but it doesn't impact the resolution, but the reporting still has to be clear. So, so as an action item, we would like some changes, and happy to, you can engage board members if you want to get some help with how to present it. But are there any other questions on item number 6? Okay, so hearing none, can we have a motion to reallocate the budget envelopes? John, Nick, thank you. All in favor? Motion passed. So we will move on to item number 12. And I just had a quick question on item number 12. And in there, there's a reference to all board members being dismissed and then reappointed? And my question is, doesn't the city do that? If you want to put up the report, and I'll see.
Which report is this?
Number 12. It talks about directors, all directors being removed, and then all being reappointed. Can somebody do a search for the, and I'm sorry, I was doing this quick. Yeah, and I didn't think, as part of the annual meeting, I didn't think that that was our authority, is the city appoints us.
I guess we're not going to be using these as much longer. Canadian.
I think the reference is intended to be page 68.
And I'm sorry, I didn't write the page number down when I read it, and I should have. Does somebody have a hard copy and I'll find it? Can somebody do a search? Yeah. Can you search directors? Yeah, are hereby
The attachment, yeah.
removal election of directors. The following directors are hereby removed. The following. List directors, the following are hereby elected directors for the ensuing year until there's.
Clarify, that is the resolution that the board is asked to approve to take the.
I have a hard copy. I don't have a hard copy. Does somebody have a hard copy?
Resolution that's on the screen is the resolution that the board is asked to approve as the annual general meeting for TCHC subsidiaries. So the officers and directors that are referenced in that document are the officers and directors of TCHC's subsidiary corporations. And the board, TCHC's board, has the authority to appoint the officers and directors of those subsidiaries.
Okay, then that wasn't clear to me. I'm sorry. I understand now. Okay, sorry about that. So can I have a motion to approve? Gord, thank you. Vanita, seconder. All in favor? Thank you. And we will move on to item number 13, which is the tenant transfer policy. And we have a deputation on this, Kathy Birch. Can you please come to the microphone? Welcome.
Let's see, is that working? It's lit up. It should be working. Maybe it's that it, is that better? Good morning, my name's Kathy Birch. I'm the chair of the RPATH committee. I'm here to talk about the transfer policy, and I need to tell you that we did some extensive work with Lindsay and her team and went through this policy line by line. We did multiple meetings. There's some changes to this policy that are critical, and they're very good news. One, it's meeting accessibility standards for communication, and the plain language I've been pushing for, and we've been harping at management and staff for a long time on policies that we need it to be understandable. And this round, we've hit that mark, and that's a big, big deal for us in accessibility. It's also got a trade into it that's not been had before, and that's that the procedure is actually attached and is a live document. One of the things that tenants, I know I was a tenant rep for many, many years, was that staff knew what procedures were, but the tenants didn't, so they didn't know how to present whatever they needed. And it was you were at the mercy, and it was also inconsistent across the regions as to how it was delivered. Now, when that procedure is attached, there's more accountability. It manages tenant expectations more, and it makes clear that our TSCs know what is or what isn't covered, because sometimes policies are pretty vague and overreaching, and what applies in one person's opinion may not apply on another. This takes some of that out of it. So I will say that it's a very effective policy. I'm really impressed with what we've gotten into it. I want to thank Nadia for making sure that we got involved in this consultation from the accessibility, and because most of us in the committee have also been tenant reps for multiple years, and so we could push it forward. So with these new changes and putting this procedure attached as a live document that management can change it through ELT as legislation may require them to do, or the city, or a city directive. Like, these things are really, really important, and to have the transparency so tenants know what to expect, folks. We know what we can expect our staff to tell us, and staff can know that tenants know what's supposed to happen. So for those reasons, thanks, Nadia. Thank you, Sean. Lindsay, it's been a pleasure. We've got more policies coming, but I need you to approve this and get it in place. We need this. They did a really good job. They did their diligence, get it through. Thank you.
Appreciate your compliments, and it's nice to know that the board certainly appreciates knowing that we're hitting the mark on this one. And I think it speaks to the value of the time that's given to tenant engagement when it comes to these policies. So thank you very much, Kathy. John?
I have a question of the deputy.
Oh, sorry.
So I didn't want her to run away.
Too quick.
You came all the way down here, so I want to ask you a question. So there's a section in the policy that makes reference to treating market tenants sort of on an equal footing with RGI tenants, and it said that was advocated for by the tenants. Why was that the case? Because to me, it seems like people who are in an RGI circumstance have fewer options than somebody who's in a market situation.
Okay, I'm going to tell it to you this way. Whether you're an RGI tenant or a market rent tenant, you're still a human being, and you're still they are entitled to equal opportunity, and it needs to be dealt with in that way. When it comes to crisis priority, specifically, if you've been traumatized by an event in your community, you've witnessed some sort of traumatic event, whether you're an RGI tenant or a market tenant, makes no difference. You're still a traumatized human being and need to be relocated under crisis priority, and that trauma isn't based on your income. It's a trauma.
So I agree with that, of course, but what if there's a choice and there's two tenants who are equally traumatized?
Right.
One is RGI and one is market. I mean, the tenant who's living in a market circumstance has other options. They can pick up and move to, you know, a regular market unit. Whereas the RGI, the person living in an RGI tenancy doesn't have that. So, and I'll come back and ask staff this question, but I'm wondering how are they going to make those choices?
Okay, but what if the one that has more trauma is actually the market tenant?
Right, yeah, okay.
So let's just pull a scenario out. There has been a shooting in one of the communities. The RGI tenant was, you know, at the far end of the building, really didn't see anything, but the market rent tenant happened to be at the, like, on the spot. You mean to tell me that that RGI tenant needs to get a greater priority than the one that witnessed what was going on? Because according to the policy before, that's what would happen, is that the RGI tenant would get the attention and the market rent tenant would be told, oh, but you've got money, you can just move on. And no, we have a responsibility to tenants, period. They're human beings, and this corporation has a responsibility, whether you're market or RGI. Your value as a human being in trauma does not depend on your bank account.
All right, okay, thank you.
Brian?
Isn't the assumption also that market people can't just move out because they couldn't find a rental at the same rate?
Well, and the reality of it is Toronto Community Housing, what we call market rent, is not the same as street rent. As when you go out and look at the want ads, those are not, they're not comparable, and they can't just pack up and leave. You're absolutely right, Brian. We call it market rent, but it's still a lot below when you look at the want ads in the paper, or you go to a real estate agent and look to rent a place. So what we call market rent really isn't true market.
Are there any other questions for Kathy? No? I think Nadia has something to report as well.
Yeah, so through the chair, I'll do some opening remarks, and then did you still want us to go ahead with the presentation, or we can go straight to questions after my remarks?
I don't know what the presentation is.
It walks us through the changes, so it looks like we can go ahead. We can do it succinctly, but we can do that. So this report and the attached policy reflects 18 months of work from the operations team. The need to revise and update the transfer policy has been clear for some time. The team has been thoughtful and comprehensive in their work, including significant consultation with tenants and other stakeholders. The updated policy strikes a balance between facilitating urgent moves for tenants who need them, upholding our accommodation requirements under the Human Rights Code, and operating within an environment of low unit availability. I want to draw the board's attention to an updated version of the policy provided by the governance team this morning. We have made 2 minor additions on pages 2 and 6, both highlighted in yellow. Staff will be sharing those changes on the screen, so Sonia, I don't know if you're able to share those. These additions were made based on additions from a deputation at our most recent TSC meeting. They add clarity for tenants on how to apply for a non-priority transfer and what mechanisms are in place to support them in getting right-sized if they're overhoused. They do not materially change the policy, but we found it prudent to include to ensure the policy provides further clarity for tenants. The implementation work following the approval of this policy will be extensive and will include communication with tenants, staff, and stakeholders. Information sessions with all the groups involved will be key for rolling out the revisions, along with an overhaul of all public-facing forums and educational material. I'm joined by Lindsay Vietz, Director of Operational Strategies and Program Services, who will be walking us through the revisions and the implementation plan. So just to clarify, we made 2 minor changes. They're highlighted in yellow. We did have a deputation at our TSC meeting that articulated there were some language changes that could help clarify for tenants who were not doing a crisis transfer priority and how they could access the services. And so we've just made some slight amendments, but it doesn't change the policy itself and what's being approved today. We just wanted to clarify that.
Can you hear me? Great, thank you. Thanks, Nadia. So we're presenting the tenant transfer policy to the board today for approval. When the team and I began the review process, we identified a number of objectives that we needed to achieve through the policy revisions. Next slide, please. So the first objective was that we wanted to make sure that the decision-making and processes were equitable to all tenants. We knew that the policy needed to be compliant with all legislation, in particular, the Ontario Human Rights Code and the Residential Tenancies Act and Housing Services Act are of importance here. We knew it was essential that we would mitigate harm to tenants in all aspects of the policy and procedure. And we knew we needed to promote autonomy and choice for tenants. And that was a significant theme we heard through the consultations, which I'll get to in a few moments. The policy and procedure in all forms and materials need to be easy to understand for tenants, partners, and staff. And finally, we are operating in a low vacancy environment within TCHC, and we don't see that changing in the foreseeable future. So we need to make sure that we're using the resources, in this case, the units that we have available for transfers, in an efficient way. So that set out the framework as we undertook this policy revision. Next slide, please.
Can I just, this presentation was in our package. I didn't understand what presentation you were speaking to because you asked to, so if you want to just do the highlights, I think you can presume that the board has read the materials that you provided. So I would just ask if there's specific things. I understand that the changes that Nadia was referring to based on the previous discussions, but
yeah, and I can speak just quickly to those changes because they're not in the presentation. So the first change is to add clarity around how tenants can apply for a non-priority transfer, which is something that is excluded from this policy. It's not covered by this policy, but we wanted to make sure that tenants understood how they could apply if they wanted to move for other reasons that weren't covered, and that's through the centralized waiting list. So that was a suggestion from Catherine Wilkinson, which we thought was great, and we added in. And then the second change was just to add a little bit more information about how tenants can become right-sized while in their existing unit as part of the overhoused process. So again, a little bit outside of the scope of the policy, but it's just really adding information for tenants so they have everything at their fingertips when they're dealing with these kinds of transfer-related things. And then the only other thing I wanted to highlight, I mean, I did want to talk a little bit about the consultations. They were extensive, and I just wanted to thank everybody who participated in the consultations. There were many, many staff, many tenants through several rounds of tenant consultations, as well as the work with our path that Kathy mentioned and engagement with the advisory committee, the tenant advisory committee. So I just want to acknowledge that work that went into these revisions. And the work specifically of the legal services team, Katie Douglas, and then my team in transfers and accessibility, because it's been a lot of work. And then finally,
worthwhile.
Absolutely. No, this is, of all the policies I've worked on in my career at TCHC, this is one of the most needed changes that we've needed to make. So I'm really proud of the work that we've done. And then finally, I want to say one additional thing around next steps. And I wanted to highlight, this is sort of an emerging issue or emerging solution that came after the policy, the report was submitted to the board, which is that we're working actively with the Housing Secretariat to keep a pool of units in what we call the non-rentable category. And this is going to allow us to make sure we always have units available for transfers. And it'll enable us to make sure we can offer these units to as many tenants as possible until there's a match. And we expect to be able to implement this change alongside the policy implementation. So I think that's just an important procedural piece that we're working on to sort of streamline things and hopefully make sure that every one of these valuable units is matched with a family who needs it as set out in the transfer policy. So that said, I'm happy to take questions.
Debbie, then John.
Thank you for that and for the great process. It's great when our path can show up and encourage us to support this policy. I appreciate that, Kathy. Talk to us some more about the overhoused process. So it says you can right size. So does that mean that if I'm living in a unit, my children have moved out, I can identify anyone to move in with me?
There are requirements with who you can identify. They have to, at a baseline level, they have to be eligible for RGI, right? So they have to go through the process whereby they get screened by access to housing at the city, and they need to meet the income requirements for RGI. That's a basic requirement. We also have to make sure that we're not going the other way too far, that we're adding too many people to the unit. So we need to make sure they're always within the occupancy guidelines. Those are the basic ones. There's obviously nuances on specific situations, but that's what I would say generally, yes.
So we are allowing someone to skip the line for RGI, is how I'm reading it. So I've been on the waiting list for 8 years for RGI, and someone who happens to know someone who lives in TCHC who is now overhoused can now be able to move in without having to be in the queue?
So the tenants are able to identify who's a member of their household. So they are able to add people to their household as long as they meet the requirements.
I see.
Through the chair, just to clarify, if an individual wanted to maintain their particular unit, we don't move them out automatically because they're overhoused. We move them through the market rent process. And so we do have individuals who opt to go to market rent and retain their unit. What the overhoused process is applicable to is your RGI status. So if you want to maintain your RGI status.
I understand that. I'm just trying to figure out the fairness issue here in terms of, okay, I'll leave it there.
Through the chair, I think that's a great point, and happy to follow up with the Housing Secretariat. Throughout the course of your tenancy, you are able to add individuals to your tenancy, whether you're overhoused or not. But I do think you make a valid point, so we'll take that offline.
His concern is, you know, bad actors, you know, that people paying people to say, yes, I can come, those kinds of things.
Excuse me, John, then Uba and Brian.
So congratulations on some really great work, and thank you. I know it's very important to tenants that we get this right. How many, Lindsay, through you to you, Lindsay, how many transfers are requested annually?
So we have, in 2024, we had just over 1,500 transfer requests. It was 1,524 in a year. Of those, approximately just over 30% are approved for transfer. 51% are denied or referred for additional follow-up. They may need support that doesn't require a transfer. And then we have about 16% which are either the tenant withdraws them or the case is abandoned based on our guidelines.
So of the 30% approved, how many of those are actually completed? How many do we complete a year?
So currently we have, to give you a sense, we currently have 368 tenants awaiting transfer in these categories. So I can pull the numbers of how many were actually completed in the year, but it just gives you a sense. You see the waiting list. It does take some time for tenants to move, for sure.
So you say there's 300 waiting for transfer, over 300 waiting for transfer, and I know that can be excruciating for people if
it's hard,
because there's a very valid reason for them wanting to do so. So that number is growing then.
It could be growing, yes, over year. We try to keep it as low as we can, but when we are particularly looking at households that require a larger unit size, so 3 bedrooms or larger, because of the number of those units that are in our portfolio and the number of vacancies that we get, the numbers just don't always match up, and it can be a wait, for sure.
And you answered my next question, and it was in regard to holding a certain number of units for transfer. So would you be looking at holding a couple of hundred, or, I mean, enough to match that backlog, or I mean, I guess you want to, so you say there's 1,500 requests, some are turned back, some are, I don't know how many wind up being valid. Will you be looking to hold a number what number are you going to be looking at holding for, so that you can accommodate and so that people aren't waiting, 6 months, a year to make this transfer?
So it's a balance, because we want to make sure that we are balancing meeting the needs of the transfer category as well as moving households from the centralized waiting list, right? So right now we're discussing with the city 100 units in the pool, and that would allow us to essentially offer each of those units until we find a match. Whereas right now, because they impact our vacancy numbers, we need to move them, we need to offer, and then we need to move them over to the centralized waiting list. So this would essentially protect a pool of approximately 100 units that would allow us to continue to offer those units until they match.
Got it. And then when somebody moves, we go in to the unit that they're about to go into, and we do this whole refurbishing, this whole move-out process, right? And so as I said, I'll throw it out there again, as I said at the committee, it would be great if tenants could engineer their own transfers without, so that the TCHC does the administrative work, but that we don't create the backlog where all of that tenant move-out process is necessary, so they can actually just physically, if they know somebody, and if you're in Etobicoke, you know somebody in Scarborough, they all agree on a move. I don't imagine that would happen very often, but it would be nice if there was that flexibility in the process.
Thank you for your comments, Chair Campbell, and we did follow up on it after the discussion at TSC. It is my understanding that we used to do that historically, but there were several complicating factors that led to us discontinuing the practice, but I'm happy to revisit it and maybe bring a small report back to Tenant Services Committee, because it is a question that comes up quite often, and I'd like to answer it more formally. So if we can capture that as an action item, we can bring that back to the Tenant Services Committee.
Thanks. Thank you.
Okay, Uba?
Thank you. Great report, very comprehensive. Thank you so much for Nadia and your team. And Lindsay mentioned you're going to hold units. Are they available as we speak, or when will they be available? I also have a couple of suggestions that I made in the past. One is to hold units, whether it is like a safe house unit where people can go while they're looking for a transitional homes or shelter or transfer. Because right now, my day job, I manage a housing project, and I come across and I support a lot of clients who are facing crisis due to gun violence, and they're looking for transfer, and they end up staying in a hotel where either crisis response or victim services or TCHC is paying the hotel, and it's quite expensive. And sometimes none of those, people are paying the money, so families end up sleeping in their cars. So my suggestion is, please, let's hold some units the same way that we hold units when we're doing the revise. We're supposed to hold units yesterday. So the sooner we can do that, the better it is. The other piece is, and is a bigger one here, I don't know if the counselors who sit at TCHC can help us. We need to reach out to the Secretariat and ask them to merge the two transfer, the crisis transfer with the SPP transfer that helps when someone is facing eviction and abuse, or human trafficking. What that will do is the person who's facing crisis transfer will automatically have that priority, which allows them not only to be on the wait list for TCHC, but also with other housing providers such as co-ops, private nonprofit, rent supplement, and TCHC. Please, let's do that. I have been saying this for the past, God knows, 3-4 years. Let's try to merge those two transfers. It will do wonders for our tenants. Thank you.
So through the chair, maybe I can tackle the first point, and then I'll throw it to Lindsay on the second. So Director Farr, I want to thank you because I know you've been extensively involved in advocating on some of the changes that we've made. We were successful in implementing many of the changes you suggested, and others were beyond our control. With respect to the safe houses, we did start to explore it, and so that is ongoing work with the team. So what that would require us to have is temporary accommodation that's furnished, that allows a tenant to temporarily move into a location. There may or may not be legal implications on their relationship with us when they're staying in the temporary accommodation. So we have to work with our legal team to pursue whether that's an accessible space for us to look at. So we're doing that. We also have incidents where we have to move tenants after fires and things like that. So we are looking into it a little bit more holistically. We would also have to move the location around in case people found out where the quote-unquote safe house was. And so there's quite a bit of logistical work on the back end that we would have to do to consider that option, but we are following up and looking into that. So I'll throw it to Lindsay on the second point about the transfer lists.
Through the chair, I also wanted to add around how long it would take us to build up that pool of 100 units. It probably will take us several months because we want to make sure that the units that are in that pool are the right kinds of units that we know we would need for transfers. So it will take us some time to build that pool up, and we're still negotiating that process with the Housing Secretariat. With respect to merging the crisis and accommodation transfer at TCHC with the SPP transfer, we talked about this at committee, and that's, as you know, it's not within TCHC's purview to make that change. And I would just add that the SPP category is provincially legislated. So there are requirements around the SPP category that are set by the province. Doesn't mean that it's not a good avenue to pursue, certainly, if it would benefit tenants and if that's something that the city is able to work with us and work with you on, then open to that for sure.
Brian.
Sorry, I just have one follow-up question. Sorry.
No, it's okay.
And we used to have a split tenancy, and now I know we stopped. There are cases where TCHC don't have big units like 4, 5, and 6 bedrooms, and tenants are saying, I have 8 kids or 9 kids or whatever. Can I have 2 apartments side by side if I cannot be transferred into one big house? Is that possible sometimes?
Through the chair, this is another area that is set by the City of Toronto through the service manager role. And split tenancies are not something that I have seen in my experience be authorized by the service manager. It is one of the rules that is most hard and fast from their perspective. That's what I have seen. So it's not something that I see happening with any regularity going forward.
Is it something that we can ask just to say maybe this is happening? Can we at least ask them to see what they say, please?
Through the chair, I'm happy to raise it with them, certainly.
Brian?
I just want to ask around coordination with Toronto Seniors Housing and whether they've adopted a similar policy and in terms of coordination between us, say, someone in our unit who wants to transfer to this seniors portfolio, has that been taken into consideration?
Through the chair, because Toronto Seniors Housing Corporation is a separate housing provider, the access to those units would need to happen through the centralized waiting list and not directly between TCHC and seniors. So we don't have a direct pipeline of tenants that can transfer from TCHC to seniors.
And a second question is with regard to some of the issues that we had when we moved, or there were individuals who were homeless moved into into our portfolio, and the impact of some of that with the required supports that were required. Is that still a possibility, or has that been resolved?
So you're speaking of the rapid rehousing program?
Yeah.
I think, so that is, it doesn't necessarily intersect with the transfer policy, but it is an ongoing issue. I believe we had a report at Tenant Services Committee last cycle around rapid rehousing and the work that we're doing there with the city. So it is still a program.
Did it supersede our transfer policy?
So through the chair, the rapid rehousing is administered through our centralized waitlist process. So it's basically the units that we're putting up to the centralized waitlist. So it doesn't impact the discussion we're having around the transfers. So what we're trying to do is model it after our relocation process, where we actually pull units, and in many cases, high demand units offline to support tenants who are relocating. So we're going to try to mimic that. So we're actually able to access units that are not going to the centralized waitlist. So the rapid rehousing program goes through the units that we would typically send to the centralized waitlist anyway. They're typically bachelor and one-bedroom units, and oftentimes in crisis transfer requests, those aren't the units that are being requested.
Have we got some assurances that the supportive housing component of that would be initiated with the rapid?
So through the chair, at our last Tenant Services Committee, we were joined by city staff from Shelter Housing and Support, as well as the Housing Secretariat, and we spoke extensively about the changes we've made to the rapid rehousing program to improve the quality of the program and some of the impact. So we've lowered the numbers by close to half in terms of the number of tenants that we are taking in. We've also lowered the acuity, so we have individuals with lesser needs on the continuum, so they're better able to live independently, and we're working with the city to identify in cases where there's supports required beyond the year to provide additional supports to the tenancy. So we've made quite a few changes to the program to ensure that we're continuing to support that clientele, but doing it in a way that TCHC could best support. So that's ongoing work, and I'm happy to share the report with you as well offline, just so you could see some of the changes that were made.
Thank you.
Are there any other questions for Lindsay or Nadia as it relates to the transfer policy? Okay, seeing none, can I have...
Through the chair, can I make one slight comment? Before we move forward. I did in my opening remarks say that the updated policy was circulated to you this morning. It's my understanding that it was not. So you have the policy that predates the two amendments that we referenced in today's discussion. So the governance team will be circulating after the meeting.
Okay, so we're not approving the policy that you gave us in our package?
No, so I've actually, I've prepared a slightly a minor amendment to the recommendation in the report that's before you. I think I'm sharing it. I'm not. Sorry, let me try that again.
And Nadia, what you highlighted in yellow in your presentation, those were words from the policy, not?
Correct.
Okay.
Yes, so rather than the policy that was the attachment to the report, the changes were only made after the policy, after the report was prepared. So what the board is being asked to approve is the policy that's in the package as amended in the updated policy document that was shared with the board on screen this morning.
Okay, John? Okay, all in favor? perfect. And thank you very much. And yeah, I emphasize the value of the engagement. It's certainly worthwhile. So we will quickly move on to item number 17, I think. That was me. And I think most of my questions, the only comment I'll make is the operations. It said that you've stopped the triage process. I just want to make sure that there's actually an improved tracking to budget and that there's, value for money analysis being done and that we're spending our money wisely, because it's not just the triage work, it's that the process improves, because the budget just blew up and nobody seemed to be able to track the overages.
Through the chair, back to the chair, absolutely. We start the internal process and across the divisions. I assume you're referring to the demand general repair for the work order triage.
Yes, it's just a general tracking to budget. It's not, that was critical, that issue, but it's just a general tracking to budget. And so I don't want you to stop triage and then we just end up in the same place. I want to make sure that the processes are in place, that we don't end up in that same place.
Yeah, we have triage priorities, working really closely with operations team and then on the back end in terms of setting up the tracking mechanism. For example, to track against the program spend. Could be demand general repair, could be plumbing. We are working with ERD to set up a tracking code and also subcategories, so that way we can track the expenses down to the transactional level and then roll up to the different program. And also some of the programs are also cross divisions. For example, could be take demand general repair as an example. There are operating expenses that fall under the operating budget, depending on our capitalization threshold. Beyond that threshold, it hit facility operations demand general repair envelope. We actually finished some of the testing just last week with ERD. We were hoping to bring more detailed, with more in-depth analysis back to BIFAC and the board in future reporting cycles.
Okay, I'm certainly hoping so, because I think that communication is really important and it's gotten us into trouble. Just even, values for RFPs, because, we've only included the FM and not the operations and, okay. It's the processes, not just.
Yeah, it will be a more coordinated approach. Now we have finance, we have FM, we have ops. We work really, work really closely together, along as well as trying to leverage our system, which is ERD.
Okay.
And through the chair, I would add, through the geographical realignment of our management team, we now have greater oversight at a regional level and a local level to actually keep track of some of the work orders. And we're also looking to implement a supplemental management check of vendor work to ensure that vendor quality is what we expect. So we're doing all of those things. I know it seems obvious. I think you're
vendor oversight.
It's an area of growth and opportunity for us, and so we are committed to doing that to ensure we are getting value for money.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure that this isn't just like a crisis thing that we reduced our budget for 1 year and everything's fine, because it's more about the processes and the data that you have so that you can do the proper analysis. Okay. Okay.
And also in terms of that, enhance the oversight and accountability. Once we have those codes set up in the system, we will be revisiting and definitely improving some of the approvals at the frontline level as well, to ensure the managers are aware of their budgetary upset limit, and also bring that report cycle on a monthly basis back to the team, so they are aware of the progress and then how much they have left in the budget envelope.
Okay, okay, and I'm presuming that you'll report back to us as you make progress to, perfect. Benita.
Thanks, through the chair. Just an additional comment. It's refreshing to hear both of you share what additional controls you're putting in place, because in the absence of like a charted ERM system where we're tracking this is very good to say you're expressing to the board your first level and second level controls. And that's something that we don't, at least in the near year I've been here, we haven't heard a lot from. So I really appreciate that.
Yes, and that's what I wanted to highlight. So it's not just a triage. Yes. Are there any other questions as it relates to item number 17? Okay, can I have a motion to receive? Benita? Naram? Thank you. All in favor? Thank you. And we'll move on to item number 18, which is City Council directions requiring board attention. And we have a deputant for this. And it is Arnold Margulies. Who? Sorry? Okay, he's online. Mr. Margulies?
Are you able to unmute so that we can hear you?
Yeah, do you hear me now?
We can hear you.
Okay, thank you very much for the opportunity to present my case here at the TCHC Board of Directors. The City Auditor General recommended the corporation to do very careful audit and inspections of the property management contractors. So I'm living in Toronto Seniors Housing, and this is the largest property management contractor of your corporation. Unfortunately, based on my experience, there is no serious audit of expenses that are done by the corporation and particular staff at the building levels, and there is no audit of what they are doing in certain rental units. I can provide you my example. I moved into the Toronto Seniors Housing Unit at Butters and Shepherd area, 400 tenants building, in about 2 years ago. I was renting a commercial unit in a nearby property, being a chair of the tenants committee there, and investigating a lot of staff misconduct. Apparently, I found that they have business connections with the super at the seniors housing building. So after I moved out and found some renovation deficiencies in my unit, and later found that the superintendent shut down for 8 months ventilation in the building, that he shut down water in common areas during summertime, that he switched the heater in the laundry during summertime continuously running at 50 degrees Celsius. So all these events, the superintendent illegally altered the unit above mine, number 1010, drilling through the concrete slab about the 12 or 15 holes, obviously using contractors to do this, and then supplied the tenant with hoses and fumigators and the chemicals. He continuously supplied chemicals, and she started fumigating my unit every night. So my complaints were quite extensive to the Toronto City Housing Corporation, and there was no in-depth investigation. The regional manager, Lorna Davis, basically prohibited to investigate this case for whatever reason, I can only guess. And there was a superficial, light investigation. She prohibited to investigate this case. I raised it with the board of directors and with the CEO, Mr. Hunter, requesting in-depth professional inspection of the Unit 1010. It was not done. So it is an obligation of Toronto Community Housing Corporation as the owner of the building to do the professional inspection of the Unit 1010 and also to audit the extensive use of funds inappropriately to illegally alter Unit 1010. So in my calculation, the encouragement of the tenant and the total upgrades to the unit and illegal alterations, numerous to the unit, were done at the level of $10,000, $15,000 above the usual renovation budget. It should be carefully investigated. And in particular, I request you to hire professional contractors, the plumber inspector and the the ventilation inspector or professional engineer to inspect the unit for hidden holes made behind the drywalls in order to fumigate my unit. So there are entry points for hoses in numerous on all corners of that unit. In particular, behind the drywall compartments where the vertical pipes run, and also between the kitchen and bathroom, where there is a drinking water pipe layout, and behind the fridge, behind the stove. So I'm simply asking you to comply with the Auditor General recommendations and do this professional inspection. And I'm prepared to meet with the CEO, Mr. Baird, and Nadia Guyeva to discuss particulars and provide more evidence about this case. Thank you very much for your attention to this matter.
Thank you, Mr. Margulies. Are there any comments or no? Thank you very much for your time, and we appreciate your comments. I don't think anyone pulled number 18. I think it was just the deputation. Okay, so can I have a motion to receive? Gord, Nick, seconder, thank you. All in favor? Thank you very much. And if there's no other business for the public session, then, oh, can I just make one comment before we go? Number 9, which is our annual report, which I always like because I love the pictures. My only request as it relates to that is in our notes to the financial statement, it says that we have over, like I think it's $116 million in commitments to our vendors just for the subsequent year. The number of vendors who support our programs, it's a really short list. It's a really short list. And the only thing I ask is if we could do more to encourage the vendors to be supportive, given the financial commitments we're making to them, that they could be supportive of the programs. I think every year I always say I think the scholarship monies just seem so small to me. And you know, maybe after I went to City Hall and went to the graduation, like these programs changed people's lives. And so the only thing I would ask is that you, and I don't know who I'm asking, maybe I'm asking Sean. I'm asking Sean to make a bigger effort to have our vendors support the wonderful things that go on here.
To the chair, I'd say you read a number of our minds, and we are very much of the same belief. And although you haven't seen it yet, there's plenty of work afoot to flesh out a very significant community economic development framework and strategy for the organization. You've seen components of it through the discussions we had on social procurement recently at BIFAC. And some of the big programming like our scholarships program, there's plenty of room to expand on all of these programs, and there's plenty of room to ask for support from organizations that we work with. So yes, very much heard, and also very much in planning.
I just wanted to say it in public so that the vendors actually heard too. If there's no other business, great. Okay, so can I have a motion to adjourn? Vanita, thank you. Naram, seconder, thank you. All in favor? And thank you very much. Much appreciated.